Hi, I'm Charlie with Precision Matthews. In our last video, we got our PM935 TV off the pallet and onto the floor. But as you can see, it's nowhere near ready to make chips. We need to move the head into the right position, get it trammed, and wire the mill up for power. And over the years, we've learned a thing or two about how to make that go as smoothly as possible. Let's get started. First, we need to loosen those four 19mm nuts on the front that hold the head to the ram. We just break them loose enough to get the head free and no more. No need to go more than about a half a turn. If we get too loose, the bolts can get a little sideways in the groove on the ram and things can bind as we're moving the head into position. It might seem simple, but I'm specifying that because you can avoid most problems in the next couple steps by paying attention here and only loosening a little. Next, we're going to use that same 19mm socket to turn the worm shaft and rotate the head to the upright position. Make sure to support the weight of the head as you're going up past 90 degrees so you don't put any undue pressure on that shaft. You can do that with one person, as I'm doing here, or you can get a friend to help support the head. It's not super heavy, but we'd rather not bind anything up or worse, damage the worm shaft, so we'll support the head a bit. Now you might be tempted to use an impact gun on the end of the shaft to raise the head at super speed. You already have the right socket on because you used it to remove the 3/4 head lag screws that secure the mill to the pallet. But just don't. The 20 seconds that you could save with the impact pale in comparison to the time it takes to call me, tell me that you broke the worm shaft, have me make fun of you for using an impact, and then send you a replacement in the mail. Maybe as you rotate the head, things start to tighten up and get hard to turn, and you figure you just need to grab the breaker bar. No thank you. Put it down. If things get harder to turn than the amount of torque on just a regular ratchet, the 4 bolt shafts that hold the head to the ram are getting sideways and binding up. If that's the case, back the head off the other way, make sure the nuts on those mounting bolts are only a little loose, and try again. If you're still having trouble, call us. I'd rather you talk to us for a couple minutes than break something and still have to talk to us. But now you also have to wait for replacement parts to come to you from here in Pittsburgh. People may also want to use a battery-powered ratchet like this one. I use one of these for almost everything. It's miles better than the old air ratchets, and I use mine just about any time I'm using 3/8 sockets. I know it's non-impacting, but we're still going to avoid it and go with the manual ratchet for this. I don't want to give you the impression that the heads on these mills always bind during this process. 9 times out of 10, it goes as smoothly as the shot earlier in the video. But if things do start to bind, you need to be able to feel that. And you don't get that with any kind of power tool. The reason I'm stressing taking your time here is because it's kind of a pain to replace the worm shaft if you break it. And you will break it if things start to bind and you try to force your way through. Just so you know the stakes, and so you have an idea of how to do it if you do break something, we're going to show you how to get the head off. Assuming you don't have access to a forklift, you'll need something like this stand that bolts to the table and goes into the spindle with a 3/4 inch collet. This is the popular option from H&W Machine Works, but I have seen people make similar jigs out of something from the scrap bin. Once it's secured to the table and the collet in the spindle is holding tightly, you make sure the quill is locked, take those 4 front nuts off completely, and move the table out on the Y-axis. Now we're looking at the back of the head, and you can see there's a grub screw that holds the worm shaft in place. You take that grub screw out, slide the shaft out, and the worm gear pops out as well. If you ignored this whole video and forced things as they started to bind, you would likely snap that shaft right where it reduces diameter to go into the worm gear. But I've seen people damage that gear as well. But you won't damage anything because you watched this whole video and decided you would take your time. Now you need to dial in the head for both tram and nod. I'm not going to get into this in detail as there are already plenty of tramming videos out there, but I will show you the setup that I like to use. I run a half-thou dial test indicator on a regular Indicall style holder that just clamps onto the quill. I measure against a set of parallels on the table and just slowly measure each side, tapping the head one way or the other as I tighten those 4 nuts on the front of the head. Then I use that same process for the nod. If you want me to get into the subject more, let me know in the comments. I could make an entire video on how I like to tram mill heads, but we'll leave it at that for now. The last thing to do is to terminate the end of the power cord either with a plug of your choice or wired directly to a junction box. This is a shot of the single-phase machine wiring, 2 hots and a ground wire. Then this is the 3-phase machine, with an additional hot wire. There is no neutral wire on any of our 220-volt machines, and that sometimes confuses people who have only ever wired up dryers and welders and things that have 2 hots, a neutral, and a ground. If you have any questions about wiring our machines, give us a call and we'll talk for a couple minutes and make sure you understand what you're looking at. So there you have it. You're ready to start making chips. And more importantly, you took your time and did things right, so you never have to find out how much fun it is to take the head off your knee mill and replace that worm shaft. Let us know in the comments if you have anything to add, or if there's anything you want us to cover more in depth about how we like to set up our knee mills. Until next time, thanks for watching.